It was a quiet evening, and I had finally settled onto the couch after a long day. The living room was dimly lit, casting soft shadows across the room. I thought I had a moment of peace, but I couldn't have been more wrong. That evening took an unexpected turn. One I never imagined. As I leaned back letting out a sigh, I absent-mindedly reached between the couch cushions to find the remote. My hand got stuck. At first I chuckled thinking it was no big deal. But the more I tried to free it, the more trapped it seemed. Frustration began to bubble up. Just as I was about to call for help, Ethan walked in, my stepson. He had a confident air about him, tall with an easy smile that seemed to charm everyone he met. His presence always seemed strong, but tonight it felt different. "What happened?" he asked. His voice calm but curious. "I've managed to get my hand stuck," I said, laughing nervously. Ethan's smile widened, but there was something unusual in his eyes. A flicker of something I couldn't quite place. He walked over and knelt beside the couch, his face close to mine as he assessed the situation. "Let me help," he said softly, his tone warm and deliberate. Ethan reached out, his hands brushing against mine as he tried to free me. His touch was gentle, almost too careful, and I couldn't help but notice how close we were. The room suddenly felt warmer. His face was inches from mine, and I could feel his breath on my cheek. My heart raced, but not because of my predicament. There was an unspoken tension building between us, one neither of us dared to acknowledge. His fingers brushed against mine again, sending a shiver down my spine. Ethan's eyes flicked up to meet mine, and the world seemed to pause. "Let me try one more time," he murmured. His voice lower now, he leaned in closer, his body brushing against mine, as he shifted to get a better grip on my wrist. My mind raced with thoughts I shouldn't be having, but I couldn't push them away. The proximity, the warmth, the way his cologne filled the air. It was intoxicating. With one final tug, my hand came free. Relief should have flooded over me, but instead I felt the weight of his gaze still fixed on me. His fingers lingered on my wrist, and for a moment neither of us moved. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. I nodded, barely able to speak. The air between us crackled with tension. This was wrong, I knew it was, but for reasons I couldn't explain. I didn't want to break the moment. Days passed, but the memory of that evening lingered. Ethan and I avoided talking about it, yet the tension between us only grew. Small gestures, a brush of the hand, a lingering glance felt charged with unspoken emotion. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but deep down I knew better. One evening as we sat watching a movie, his hand accidentally brushed against mine. The touch was brief, but it sent a wave of warmth through me. I glanced at him and our eyes met. Neither of us said anything, but the silence spoke volumes. "We need to talk," Ethan said one evening, breaking the silence that had settled between us. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Okay, what's on your mind?" He hesitated, his expression torn. "I can't stop thinking about what happened, about you." His words hung in the air, heavy and raw. My breath caught and I struggled to find a response. "Ethan," I began carefully, "on whatever you're feeling, it's not something we can act on. You're my family." "I know," he said, his voice breaking, "but I've never felt this way about anyone. I can't ignore it." I placed a hand on his shoulder, trying to steady us both. "We have to set boundaries. This can't happen." Despite our conversation, the tension didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. Every moment alone together felt like a test, and I could feel my resolve weakening. I tried to focus on my own life, but Ethan's presence was inescapable. One evening after my husband left on a business trip, Ethan knocked on my door. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice steady but vulnerable. I hesitated but nodded, "Sure." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I know this is complicated," he began, "but I need you to know how much you mean to me. You're the only person who really sees me, who understands me." His words cut through me, exposing emotions I've been trying to bury. Ethan, I said softly. This isn't just about us. It's about what's right. Then why does this feel so real? He asked, his voice tinged with frustration. I had no answer because it did feel real. Too real too.